So just back to that idea of, larger departments often sponsor untrained individuals to go to the academy, go through that and become qualified and kind of help to build the pool of officers that are available in the regions. That may be something that Erving may want to consider also doing, maybe one at a time, just because the challenges that are ahead, in addition to what we've already faced in, off and on through the years and are right now with staffing. It may be a budgetary thing that we consider in coming years in terms of, funding someone who is, potential as a sponsor.
Well, I think going forward, we're going to have to. You're not going to have the pool without a part-time academy. There's not going to be staff that are just available to come in that have been trained, unless you're taking from another department. Somebody's, that's the only pool you'll have. So I think in order to create the pool, we'll have to be looking for candidates that we sponsor from the ground level.
Right. And talking through how does that look? Is that a budgetary wise? Are we, adding a headcount cost or the training costs and all of that for an additional patrol officer? And this is, management discussions we haven't defined. It's just some ideas that are out there around an additional officer than our standard scheduled coverage. And while, if we've sponsored someone, they successfully complete the academy, get through training, and then they are adding value, great. And if they leave, we don't have a deficiency because we are designed around one less person, right, in terms of standard staffing, just to keep it constant, right, because that's the other challenge. So just some high-level stuff that we have been talking through there. Anything either of you have or questions or comments around the hiring, patrol officer hiring specifically?
No. With the addition of last night's appointments, we'll have 4.5 staff.
Did you say 4.5?
Well, we have a part-timer.
We have a couple, right? I believe we have a couple part-time appointments already, at least one or two already, and
yeah.
last night an additional. I believe you're, off the top of my head, I believe you're correct.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it'll be 5, including chief. 5 of the 6, full-time. Good?
Yep.
Okay. The next topic was discussion of the New England Police Benevolent Association Local 121 statement, their public statement and response. And really the question, at least on the outset to the board, is does one of us willing to work with council and Brian in developing and posting a response to that public statement? And is the rest of the board supportive of having one person do it versus discussing the entire content in public session?
I don't have a problem with having one person do it. Given our meeting schedule, it would take quite a while for us to continue to meet and put together a response. So I wouldn't have an issue with that.
I don't have a problem either way. Is this a reaction into the statement that was posted on Facebook?
Prior to the annual town meeting, that
Right.
statement? Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I'm sorry to say I haven't read that statement. and I haven't seen it. Basically because I don't believe Facebook or any other social media has any redeeming value to it. It's just a fear-mongering, suspicious media that's used to promote individuals' personal ideas or of events, so I choose not to read it, and unless it comes before me in an official way, not particularly interested.
I'll just add, I respect your opinion and don't have Facebook either. So only after I was provided a hard copy did I see it either, so completely understand. That being said, and directionally, I think it's just to clarify some portions of it and ensure that the facts are clear in what is there. That's the purpose, just to give you some context.
Okay.
In areas where, you know, the town may have a different recollection of the facts. That being said, I am fine doing it, but if either of you are interested in being that person to handle it, I have no concerns either way.
I have no concerns with you doing it.
I'm sorry, Jake, I can't really, I'm having a problem hearing as well, so, and I'm right up front, and I can't.
Test it further at another day. So we'll do it without the speakers. Hasn't been tested enough.
All right, we'll try to project better without the speakers on. Let us know if.
That's 100%.
Okay.
I can hear you now.
Can you hear me now? Great. Bill, I'm not sure where to go back to, but the question that I had last was just I have no concerns with acting as that person to work with council on drafting the public statement,
Okay.
but I also have no problem if either of you wish to. And I believe Scott said he had no concerns.
Yeah, I have no concerns.
Okay, then I will take care of that with council. Next topic is discussion of police department staffing concerns. And I know we've had obviously we've had a lot of discussion at the board table regularly, almost every meeting, about what we're doing and how to most expeditiously resolve and try to mitigate the staffing challenges that we have right now. Unfortunately, not something that I think most of us haven't had to deal with in the past. This is not a new problem. It seems to come in cycles, being we are a small employer. I know there's been some public statements and comments around concerns about that. So I guess I'll leave it at that. And for the board, if either of you would like to bring up or address anything specific,
Well,
we
yeah.
can continue from there. But
Yeah,
just
I'll just mention a couple of things. That it's a two-pronged issue that we've known about for a while, try to work with. There's the immediate shortage that we try and alleviate. We're appointing officers. We've got Officer Gordon coming on board. We have part-timers coming on board. We trying to get new staff to be able to come in and fill the void for the immediate. The long term, and I think that's what the letter speaks to in multiple concerns, is the retention of. and how do we promote retention of, so that we don't have to get this cyclical turnover and change. So, as far as the immediate shortage, we're diligently working through that with the chief to try and find candidates that can come in immediately so that we can regain our staffing levels that allow us to get as close to as 24/7, which we've never actually been able to really cover. There's always been voids. Even with 6 full-timers, you're not going to get 24/7 without overtime and lapse in coverage. But you get close to it. So that's the immediate thing that we've been working on with the appointments that we're working on. The chief is actively out there trying to find candidates for that. The long term, the retention, is a longer conversation. And I know Bill mentioned it during discussions of the budget, saying that we need to reevaluate the police wages. That was discussed in public. You watch the videos, you'll see it. We've mentioned that this coming cycle was going to be our complete evaluation of the wage study that was done back in 2020. So this was the cycle that we're already anticipating looking at all of that. So that's not a new concept for us, that we need to reevaluate that. So that's been on the radar to do since the original one was done. It was deemed that it should be 3 years and that we would reevaluate it in 3 years. I wasn't here for that piece of it, but that's what I'm being told. So it's already in progress. I'm not sure what else we can do other than continue on the progress that we're doing towards evaluating the wages, not only for the police, but for the entire department, all departments, for the entire town, to make sure that we are still staying true to what we wanted. Competitive wages, competitive benefit packages, a holistic package of compensation that attracts people to want to come to the town and stay in the town. So that process was started a couple years ago when we first did the study, and it's going to continue on. And it's not a one and done. We would evaluate it this year. We'll come up with a comparison of where we were 3 years ago, and I am certain that out of that will be a timeline of, we should evaluate this in a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever the time frame is. It's an ongoing evaluation. Nothing is stagnant in wage scales and compensation packages and contracts, and none of them are stagnant. They're always ever evolving and ever changing, so that'll continue to happen. So I just want people to understand that process was already in place, and we'll continue to work on it. Thank you.
And I think, you touched on it, but a big piece of the work that we've discussed doing in the coming year is around the entire compensation package, which was not as much the focus of the last process. We were trying to get a baseline and standardize, comparison and accurate job duties to classify and create a grade and step that we did not have across town at that time. So this is, to me, somewhat of building on that to go further and take a better look at, the market that we are in and how competitive are we, and then balance that with how competitive we'd like to be and how competitive we can afford to be. And also the fact that the wage is only one part of the cost of, all the costs that are involved in having an employee, and the costs that an employee has to bear, and how those are offset with other parts of compensation. So to me, that's an important piece that we didn't have last time to include in, our discussions. And so I look forward to bringing that into this next round of discussion. Jim?
At an appropriate time, if I could provide some commentary.
Absolutely. Bill, I'd give you an opportunity if you had anything you wanted to say before.
The only thing I'd like to say is wages for all of us is an important issue. And I know it's an important issue with all of our departments and department heads and employees that we employ in the town of Erving. It's especially important to me as far as law enforcement and the police department. I've been in law enforcement for 30-plus years, and I know all about wages. I was in the union for 30-plus years. I was a steward. As my counterpart on the other end of the table.
I didn't have 32 though, only 20.
So, so we're both keenly aware of union issues and issues that concern law enforcement and employees as a whole. And I just want to say that up front that I'm here to do anything I possibly can within our power as select board members to improve the status for everyone. Law enforcement, highway, treasurer, whatever that position might be. And it's an important issue. I think the biggest problem is not even increasing the wages, is the retention of the officers that I see as the biggest problem up front. I think it's going to continue to always be a problem because we're a small community, and it's difficult to retain people. People are always looking to go somewhere better or somewhere else. There's programs that are offered in larger departments that we can't ever compete with and offer to officers in our department, or even just regular employees of different departments. And that includes training, the whole spectrum of all the issues that we're dealing with today. But I will do my part to, as my fellow board members will, to rectify that as best we can and to do it in a way that is fair and proper for all of us. And I think in the end, we'll all be satisfied and happy with it. We're going to all come back to this table again and again and again because that's the environment that we live in, and it's we can increase wages within a budget and to a point where the town is happy with that and happy with what we're doing, but there's a point where wages just aren't enough. And we've seen it over time and time again that even though we increase the wage, employees leave for larger departments, more training. You have it, and that's what we're competing with. All of you out there know what we're competing with and what you're competing with, and so retention is the major problem. Wages is an issue, and that's something that we can address, and we will. But the other things that go along with it, I don't know how we address those issues. And maybe, hopefully, if we can give an officer or an employee a decent, honest wage in which to live and take care of their families and maybe put some money away at the same time, that may be enough to, along with an excellent benefit package, will be enough to keep people here. But we know how that actually works, so I would open it up to, I more want to hear what you have to say and what your concerns are and what your questions might be.
Would you mind coming up? Thank you.
I didn't need that. So I can use my outdoor voice. Would you like me to introduce myself for those who might not know me?
Please do.
My name is Jim Loynd. I am a Erving resident, have been for many years, and I also was a member of the Erving Police Department until my retirement in 2020. I'd like to comment on a few things, respond. Bill, I respect your opinion of social media. With that, the concerns that I've addressed to the board, to the town administrator, and to the public as a whole, I have addressed directly to you in the form of a formal letter. I have shared open letters through open source media, through social media, because while it has its pitfalls, it's also an efficient way to get information out. So I will say respectfully, any comments, concerns, criticisms, or otherwise, I will address the board and I will put my name on it. My most recent letter that I sent to you, I can't emphasize enough. It's not meant to criticize. It is meant to add a sense of urgency to this topic. Partially for my own personal reasons, because the lack of staffing almost became a bad issue for me. With that, yes, Scott, I agree that maybe it's a multi-prong issue. It's at least two. One of the other prongs, of course, is budget. You have a short-term staffing issue, a long-term sustainability issue, which will be driven by a budget, ultimately the taxpayers, what our levy limit is, and how much taxpayers are willing to put towards this initiative if it's important to them. So I appreciate the effort, and I know that this isn't going to be fixed tomorrow. But I urge you as a citizen of this town to expedite the issue as best as possible, and I know you spoke to that. Lastly, as you go through this, like you said, this isn't a static situation. It is fluid, and it will always evolve. As our culture evolves, as everything evolves. Recruitment levels for law enforcement across the board are down. So being competitive in the market is hard. Supply and demand. As you go through this, and as you said, reviewing things, I would encourage you to revisit the job descriptions, specifically the ones that you had us as employees, as staff members, fill out. I will say that there was some confusion on what we were expected to do. There were instances where, well, it was a running joke that, Jim, you take things so literally. And maybe my discourse was more than what some people thought was necessary. And it was suggested that I could consolidate it, or things, well, one in particular was the fact that at the time, and maybe things have changed now, I didn't work for Chief Holst, but many times, oftentimes, we worked alone. We had to make decisions, life and death decisions, alone. Without the assistance of a supervisor. We were our own supervisors. I was told at the time, no, you're not a supervisor. You don't have supervisory responsibilities. So I would say I strongly urge you to revisit that exercise with town employees across the board and make sure that the intent is crystal clear. Because I don't believe it was the last time. And again, I'm not trying to criticize anybody, but I don't believe it was crystal clear. And I believe that should be revisited. With that, I appreciate your efforts. As you might already know, I'm willing to help, and I'm more than willing to provide opinions or input if and when needed. That's all I have to say. I thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, Jim. Appreciate you sharing that, understand, and not to speak for Bill and social media, but just I respect that you provided that to us directly first, at least I assume first, and
I gave you
That-
a 4-day head start.
and that's all I would ask for. So I appreciate that and understand why people use social media, and that's fine. So no opinion otherwise on your actions in terms of that personally. In terms of the process, we will do everything we can to, go through it as quickly but diligently and, comprehensively, and ensure we don't maybe take some of the missteps that we've learned from the last time in this round. Everything will be obviously in public session. It will be posted. We welcome anyone and everyone to come, and I think as most everyone has experienced, we generally always take anyone's comment, resident or not, just thinking of last night, and we'll at least let hear what people have to offer and bring to the discussion. So welcome it and appreciate it, even if we don't agree on everything. So that is the purpose, is to have the discussion.
We can respectfully discuss it and disagree.
Yes, we can.
I'm perfectly fine with that.
I'm not adding something else because I think you brought up good points, but obviously they don't all have answers tonight. So
Well, I'd like to follow up with a question to at least one of the things that Jim stated. Are you asking that or suggesting that on a nightly shift, if you will, theoretically, when an officer is out lone, that there should be 2 people on that shift or a supervisor on that shift?
I think with the changing climate, for the purposes of officer safety and some of the dynamics that have changed in our culture, that should be considered. Whether one is acting in the formal capacity of a sergeant or a supervisor role and the other is a patrolman, it may be warranted. Again, just to, because I had to today revisit the incident of October 19th of 2018, there were some serious decisions that needed to be made in split seconds. Having the benefit of an experienced officer on a shift is certainly worth considering. Absolutely.
So there's 2 issues. There's an issue of a supervisor being available, and then probably separate from that, a 2-man shift as opposed to a 1-man shift, depending on the hours.
And as I said, it's not a static situation, and there's a lot that's changing culturally. Just the general divide and angst in our society as a whole right now presents a lot of additional problems. And while I fully appreciate, on one hand, there's a tax levy and a budget, and if I openly say, I believe we should attract and retain the best talent possible. That comes at a price, and where do we find that balance? Do I appreciate our highway department and the job that they do every winter, and I drive off my hill and then I go into another town and I realize how good we have it? Not a slam on other towns, but we have great service. Should we consider adding additional fire and EMS? I know we funded a day shift because years ago, one of the arguments was most of the medical calls came in during the day when our full call force department was at work. And it was the cops who got there first and provided, life-sustaining measures within our limits until an ambulance could get there. So we moved to have the fire department and EMS staff during the day. Is it worthy of considering, again, in this balance, and good luck. Again, I'll try to help and I'll give my opinion. I know all of this stuff sounds like a great idea. Eventually you slam face first into a budget and a tax levy. But if we have life-threatening medical calls in the middle of the dinner hour and nobody's available to show up, should we be staffing that? People are gonna say, what's our biggest asset here in town is our children, and are we funding the school? And everybody's gonna look, and we'll have to try and figure out that balance. I guess as a taxpayer, I'll say, I know we have a great deal here, and I know it may not last forever. Personally, I'd be willing to pay more if I knew these services were going to be increased and improved. That's what it comes down to, is ultimately, you guys could cut great deals for everybody, golden tickets across the board. But if the town doesn't agree to pay the bill, it does nothing.
And I just want to follow up with this, that there's budget concerns and there's obviously, budget is at the forefront for everybody. Every individual that lives in the town of Erving is concerned with the budget and concerned at what is it going to cost them on a daily basis. But they're also concerned about safety, and we're also, as a board, concerned about officer safety, your safety when you're out there. So.
Not anymore.
Well, the officers and the folks that work for us that are out there working day in and day out, whatever their job may be, we're concerned about their safety, ultimately in the end. And so we have to put all that together in a way that works for everybody.
And we were concerned about yours when you were.
I know you were.
And the citizens too, right? Just, all of it, right? Every day.
I said
think we are.
then, I'll say again. In the concern, the care that I received after my critical incident, that one particular one, that garnered the most attention, I'm grateful. I always will be, and I will never say otherwise. Right now, we're up against some other problems, and they need immediate attention. And I'm not saying that you're not giving it to it, I'm just...
Some of the things that you brought up, Bill, just reminded me of some things that I was thinking of when you said that. And, you mentioned budget and levy, and you did as well. And those are always constraints that we have to balance or have no choice with at some level. The other piece, the other levers we have that, we're always aware of, but again, are a challenge about where do we make change. There's a job quality impact, right? We can change how we when and how often we replace equipment, what kind of equipment we do, how we keep our buildings up, all of those things that affect the environment that people work in every day and the tools they have at their disposal to do their jobs, right? All those have costs and are all part of that budget balance. And the conveniences, I'll say, and the, frankly, I feel spoiled living in Erving. I feel like we are spoiled with the benefits that we have as residents. Before I sat here, before I was involved in government at all, the things that we take for granted at times, I believe, or at least I take for granted every week, that trash shows up and the stickers, okay, I have to put one on, but they're free. And that's just one thing. Leaf pickup, all these different things that we've all come to enjoy. The fact that we do drive on the roads in Erving and don't think about the fact that it's snowing and get in another town and may go, may want to slow down, be careful, whatever it is, because there's a difference. Those are all things that are balanced when we try to figure out what are the changes and where are the right places to adjust to make an adjustment somewhere else. Those are other levers we have, other levers that the taxpayers have at least some voice in, wanting to change to allow space for something different. I don't say that because I have an answer, just to say that there's a balance there, and it's something that is also something I want to look at and think of when we're going through the wage conversation this coming fiscal year. But as we go into the budget cycle as well, probably at least we'll have some learnings, even if regardless of what decisions are made out of the wage work. And so as we look at the budget as a whole, maybe it's, there are areas that I think it deserves further, discussion and a look at, right? Are these the right places to be spending that much money? And maybe they are. Maybe everything is the way we want it to be, but, wages, retention, all those are big challenges. Every person in town is affected by the inflation. They feel it. We all do, right? And the decisions we make and the tax rates that come out of that are all part of every citizen's, impact too. So I just say that to say all of it, everyone's affected by it, everyone understands it in their own way, and how this has been painful this last year plus, and hopefully that will slow, but we all have to figure out how to navigate that as best we can. I think, Bill, you brought up really good things about retention that I don't know if we can ever, today I don't know how we overcome, which are, we don't have the room for as much advancement in any department pretty much because of our size. We just don't have the scale. So there's not as much opportunity, and that just comes with size, some of it. We may have some opportunity to offer other paths that we can support. You said trainings and different ways and different skill sets that we can sponsor groups to garner and gain that they don't have today, and add some value to them as an alternative to some of those things. So, those are some of the things that I think we can be creative about, but I don't see how we'll ever actually be able to offer some of those things and some of those paths that people are going to be interested in. So that is a challenge I don't know how we'll ever overcome, but I welcome an idea if someone has them. But all right.
So just going back to when you're talking about projecting to the future and that +1 model, if I can call it that, where you have your full staffing +1 in case somebody's out sick, somebody, God forbid, wants to go on vacation or is injured or leaves, whatever. In a +1 model, pairing that with some of the job quality benefits, opportunities that don't come at a big cost necessarily to the department. I personally was given opportunities to use my specialties, investigating internet crimes and working, crimes against children and human trafficking. There were other officers who were provided opportunities to work on narcotics task force. We had a K-9 program here for a while, which was funded at least in part, through private donations and fundraising. So in terms of those added benefits to the quality of the job, there are opportunities for, speaking specifically to the police, that don't come at a large cost. And if you have a +1 model, and there was a time when I was working a big internet crimes case, and I would fit that in between calls on my patrol shift. But if there was that +1 model, and that officer could focus full attention, if a particular case, or if it's could spend time working on any other type of task force that are available regionally, and you have that +1 coverage, that might be an incentive for a person to say, okay, well, I might have to wait forever for a supervisor opportunity, but I get to sink my teeth into something I really am passionate about. And it may not come at a huge additional cost for the town, budgetarily.
I was just going to mention two things. One, related to when we talk about budget, we talk about levy limits. Oftentimes I can get caught up with looking at the next fiscal year or the next 2 or 3 fiscal years. But really, I try to step back from that and look at a sustainable model that'll live far longer than my time on this board, hopefully my time in the town. It's something that we can build that is sustainable beyond just a couple of years. So keeping that in mind, that sometimes those models, while it may not address in year 1 or 2 what we're hoping to get to, it creates a model that allows for longevity and sustainability so that we can grow that model over time. So that was one piece. And to talk about like the +1 model, there's various models out there depending on scheduling of various departments. If you talk about like a 4 and 2 schedule, there's models that say you need a 1.85 ratio, not just a +1. So there's studies out there. There's information out there. I know I went through that with my previous employer, looking at what the staffing patterns are and how many you need, and for coverage based on shift rotation and what are your desired outcomes. So it's not a new concept. It's just deciding what model we're looking at as a whole, and whether that varies from department to department, union to non-union. There's different categories that fall into that come into play. So it's a complex discussion with a lot of nuanced pieces that we would have to look at to make sure that we're addressing all of those issues. So.
Bill, if you have anything else, I've talked plenty and don't, at this point, have more to add.
Yeah, I would say I'm in favor of looking at how do we increase the patrol force to allow individual officers to specialize in areas that they enjoy. But I think they have a job to do, right? So you have to be able to free them up some kind of way, and I'm not sure that a +1 will do that. I've always thought that looking at Erving, the Erving Police Department as a whole, that we need to sit down and come up with okay, how many officers do we really need in order to complete the tasks that we're required to perform on a daily basis? Night shift, day shift, and evening shift. And then you need a group of people, and I've always felt that removing the part-time officers from the Erving, the police department was a mistake. That we need that force to help back up you guys that are out there doing the job 9 to 5, 11 to 2 in the morning, whatever the time is. You need a group of people that I don't know how you bring them along. That's a whole different issue, but we got to find a way to do that. But you got to have a group of people available to step in and cover shifts and to cover whatever might be going on. It could be a disaster. How do you bring other people to fill in those officers that are already overworked, overstretched, and have other commitments besides what their a regular assignment is on a day-to-day basis. So I would like to, when we sit down and look at that, how that works and how that functions, is that we use we can't do without using every resource that's out there and find a way to bring all those resources together to make the department work, to allow for an officer being out, to allow for vacation time, to allow for all the things that might occur that on a daily basis that takes that one officer away from the shift or 2 officers away from the shift. You need a backup, and currently we don't even have a backup. So we're up Schitt's Creek without a paddle, essentially.
And I think if memory serves me correctly, one of the driving factors behind the elimination of part-time officers was training and certification. And there's that question of, well, if you have a part-time officer, part-time training, relatively new, but out on their own, and again, having to make those decisions, sometimes life and death, without a lot of either A, life experience, or B, professional experience, or C, combination of both, there's a huge liability to that. And you can't say, sorry, I'm a part-time officer, call back with your emergency when there's a full-time officer available. So there was a liability concern and a safety concern. Now, as police reform is taking shape, and we have the elimination of the reserve intermittent academy, and any officer has to be the equivalent of full-time certified, I believe that may satisfy that concern and allow, as was said, we're bringing in part-time officers, but they're part-time officers who are full-time certified, so it may very well be where it could have been a mistake to make that even for the right reason at the time, but perhaps we're in a different place. As we've said, this is a fluid situation, and now may very well be the time that we stock a roster with 12 bodies.
Right. Well, all I'm saying is we need a way to supplement our officers, and that's with part-time certified officers, trained to the extent that they can function and do the job and understand the laws and rules and regulations, and you can't do that either without supervision. So we need to look at all of that and put all of that together in a way that it works for us, as a community, as a town, as a department, and fits into a budget or that we all can live with.
I think that, Jim, I remember, I think Bill and I were sitting here when that conversation about, discontinuing part-time at the time was had, and I remember some of the same concerns, and we also didn't have the staffing situation we have now. So it was a different place, right, to make that decision then. I am concerned, I think it's a positive in terms of the experience level or training level of a quote-unquote part-time officer a couple years down the road when that's potentially the, every officer is at least full-time academy trained. But my concern is, will there be a pool of people who want to work part-time? Because maybe a little bit, but at the scale that departments will need across the regions, because they are full-time certified, and at least if the trajectory of the pool of officers continues the way it is now or doesn't improve significantly, there are jobs for every one of them. So I just don't know that that is going to be sustainably available in a long-term plan. Like Scott talked about, multiple years ahead, and how sustainable is that? So, and that goes back to what's the design that the chief and the board feel is the level we want to achieve, and then what's the path to get there, and what's the cost, and how do we navigate that? And again, there's the immediate, but that's the long term, and that takes time, probably more time than we'd like. But, did you want to add something?
I'm going in a totally different direction.
Okay.
So I have nothing to add to budget, any of that. But what I want to add is, and those of you that read the email are very aware, I had an anaphylactic reaction a week ago or whenever it was. I had Jim call 911 for me. I've had this happen before. I just want the townspeople to understand that in the past, when I've had to call 911, I had the police come, I had a rescue truck come, so I had people there immediately to see how I was doing while we waited for an ambulance to come from Orange or wherever. This time, called 911, no police response, we get the medic from town, one of the EMTs, paramedics from town show up in his personal truck with no oxygen. Thankfully, I know what my body needs when I have an anaphylactic reaction. I already started the process before calling 911. There are a lot of people in town. There's an elderly person, a young person who's never had it before, have no idea. They don't take that first step before they call 911. And since putting the letter on Facebook, there's a lot of people that are saying, I had no idea. I had no idea this was going on in our town. So that's why when I called 911 for my husband or my father, I didn't get a response right away. Like, this is life and death stuff that the town needs to figure out a way to deal with. Like I said, I know how to deal with mine. He probably could have driven me to the hospital before I got there in an ambulance. But he got yelled at for doing that years ago, the first time I had one of these reactions. So it hasn't happened again. I've now called the ambulance many times. But something needs to change, and I get it, and I understand the police are short, I understand everything, but the town needs to be aware that this is what's happening, that you're calling 911 at 6 o'clock at night and you're waiting for an ambulance to come from Franklin before you can get any assistance of any kind. So.
All right.
I know exactly where you feel. I was in the town meeting, I don't know when it was, when we had voted. The chief was gonna get one of those AED machines for his cruiser, and then we made a motion and made it so all the cruisers had those things. Well, on February 28th, I thought I was dead. I called the ambulance 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I kept telling my wife not to worry, that a cruiser will show up and they have an AED. In case I'm having a heart attack, they'll be able to take care of me. Well, that didn't happen. It was 15 plus minutes before I was having a heart attack. Thank God it had something to do with the medication, or whatever. But, if I would have crashed, I don't know if I'd be sitting here today. And I was petrified. I mean, you're sitting there, you don't know what's going on with your body. You feel like you have a heart, and you're like, don't worry, if the ambulance don't get here, the police will be here. And then none of that happened. And finally, someone showed up. My wife says 18 minutes. I feel it was 15, but whatever. But they finally put some stuff on me and said, we got to get you to the hospital and stuff. But, honest to God, I mean, I thought for sure that, that I would see somebody in 4 or 5 minutes after I called, and there was nobody. 15, 16 minutes when you think you're dying is a long frickin' time, let me tell you right now. I was petrified to death. I thought for sure I was gonna die any second. And when you're sitting there and that's happening, and you've called 911 and you're like, where the heck is somebody? You're just waiting for lights to come up your driveway and there's just nothing. And you're like, it was a scary time for me, it really was. And I just, to be honest with you, when it was all done and over with, I was kind of disappointed. I was disappointed in my town that so many times I've come and, I've been on myself. I mean, I've been on, working with the police department for, I don't know, over 10 years now as an animal control officer. I'm on medical leave right now. But I was just like, where the heck is somebody? You know what I mean? It was just like, nobody. And thank God my wife wasn't. The only reassurance I had is that my wife was a nurse. So hopefully she'll keep me alive if I collapse until somebody gets here. And that's the only reassurance I had while I was sitting there. It was the longest 15 to 18 minutes, whatever it was, of my life. I can tell you that right now. It was the longest. You think about these things and everything, and boy, when it happens to you, it's a whole different ballgame. When you're sitting there and you're clenching your chest and you think the next breath could be your last, trust me when I tell you, you want to look out there and see those beautiful lights and somebody coming up that driveway or someone coming in to help you, whether it be an officer or EMT. Somebody's got to be there. And, after reading that, and then I was just like, wow, here we go again. And at that point, it's just like, I'm really concerned. And that's why I came here tonight, because I was just super concerned. I mean, it's just like, I'm just telling you, no one thinks, it's always someone else. It's always someone else until it happens to you. And boy, it sucks when you're sitting there waiting for someone to show up. And I mean, at that point, I wanted to see blue lights, any kind of lights that, could reassure that if something went wrong, I got something that's going to help me. Somebody's going to help me. And I didn't see nothing for the longest time in my life, and that's just the way it was, and I just, is like, which I can't, I gotta we gotta get this taken care of as fast as we possibly can, and I know that you guys are working as hard as you can and all that, and it's tough out there right now with all the people, and for me, I think personally, I thought, because if I go back to 2018, I mean, I was one of the ones that was gonna go to the Reserve Academy when we had Chief Blair, and then a couple of weeks happened, I got put on hold, and then all of it went away. So it was like, well, that ain't happening for me now. I'll move on. But it's just, there is going to be so many different hard things, and it's hard to get someone that goes through the whole academy. They're going to work for how many part-timers you're really going to find. You know what I mean? It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. And so I think we have a huge task ahead of us, but it's just, we got to cut through it, and we just got to get it done, because lives are at stake. We're going to have our people, and we're going to have people that we know, our neighbors and things, dying. And if we ever found out, there ain't one person in this room, if we found out that somebody we knew died because someone didn't show up for 23 minutes, and they're saying, my God, he was having a heart attack and no one showed up for 23 minutes. There ain't a person in this town, and you can feel like crap. That did we do enough? Should we have done more? And I'm just telling you, I literally lived through it. Like I said, in this town, I've been here a long time, been involved with a lot of stuff, and it's always, you want things done, you're thinking of other people, but it's always somebody else until it happens to you. And when it happens to you, and I can just tell you firsthand, it is some scary stuff, and you just want to see those lights. And I just think we got to do whatever we can do, whatever we got to do to get the staffing situation straightened out, because it is truly life and death.
Thank you. Anything else before we move on to our last topic? I see you first taking notes. I just want to give you an opportunity
Yeah,
to say yes or no.
notes for myself.
Okay,
Yeah, just
okay.
I mean, just I will I will make one last comment if you'll allow me to.
Absolutely.
Thankful that in these two incidences that, they worked out the way they did, and I'm glad that they worked out the way they did. Bringing up, public safety, we got wrapped up in a conversation about police, but lost in that is just the general public safety, and thank you for bringing that up, Kelly. It's one of those where looking at, I was on the board in my previous rotation in this position when we added the full-time fire department staff in the day shift. And one of the conversations back then was, this is step one, hopefully, of increasing fire department staff availability in the future as well. So I think part of the conversation going forward is not isolated to just police department or just highway. It's public safety in general of all of it, and how can we provide public safety, and how does that work in collaboration, fire, police, EMS. Right now we contract out with third party to provide ambulance service for our town. I know there was a desire from Chief Wonka, and I don't want to misquote him, he's not here to correct me, but there was a desire years ago to have our own ambulance in town and do that. So, those are optimal pie in the sky. What can we do if money was no object, if budget was no object, what could we do? How can we provide the best service possible? Those conversations are ones that we need to have. So I appreciate your comments, and those will all be part of it. It may not be a one department solution to a town-wide issue. So.
Just a quick comment, that I will tell you, Orange Ambulance, I've had them multiple times help me, and they're fabulous.
I've heard great things from their service as well.
They're the ones that yelled at me, that's why.
I do think, though, the gap between when the ambulance service can arrive, regardless of which side of town and what service is coming, is still something we need to do whatever we can to improve the time in between. But I do think overall our EMS, our ambulance services now are much better than what we had before in general. So I hope that has improved. That still doesn't mitigate the time between, unless we're going to house one, which again, I think it unfortunately probably is pie in the sky. That isn't changing. But the other thing I thought of when you're talking about that, Scott, is we see a lot of it with posts. We see a lot of it with police reform, with all the different topics that are out there right now. We see it with a lot of our small neighbors. How are they going to sustain policing in the coming years? How are they even going to afford it or be able to have, again, the talent or the staffing required to provide any level of service? Not necessarily the level that we try to provide here in Erving. So, it's a much longer term discussion, but there's going to probably be more regional efforts. We see it with the ambulance services. We see it with Northfield is engaging with more communities, which, while it may seem like it divides up their availability, it also gives them further funds to increase what they can do. So it's a balance, right? And so I think we're going to see more of those discussions. I don't know how those, Erving will engage in those or be part of or be interested in, but I know, other communities are having those conversations. We see Everett and Wendell, partnering. So I think some of those things are going to be discussion points, right? I know Gil wanted to just have a really high level conversation about what are even possibilities out there with us. Some of those things may assist us in being able to achieve some of the goals in Erving that we want to do. Those are other ways that we may get to places that we can't get alone. Don't even know if that'll happen or that'll be on the table, but it's another longer term direction that is out there as a possibility. So. Absolutely. And
It's not completely foreign to other parts of our country where they have regionalized systems, regionalized school system where I believe I had this conversation years ago when we were talking about further regionalizing our school districts with Gil Montague or Pioneer or other places or sharing assets. And I believe Maryland has 30 school districts statewide. We have 300 and something. And same thing with police. There are areas that, aside from your big municipalities, the area is covered under the umbrella of the sheriff, and they have patrol shifts that cover a wider range that they can rotate. And I know firsthand, that's a very sensitive topic, especially here in Massachusetts. And you've got local municipalities that don't want to give too much power to any one individual or organization, and this is how we've policed, and we like our cops, and we don't want your cops, or we don't. I know that conversation, but at some point, it may require that shift in thinking.
The landscape is changing.
The landscape is changing, and yeah, we have to be honest about that, even if we don't like it. I think personally, I'm always going to be concerned most with how does it maintain or improve the level of service that we offer to Erving today to our residents, whatever that may be, in terms of other regional options. So, but any other community that's regionalizing has the same concerns, and so finding a way to match those up and still meet those needs. It's not an insurmountable challenge, but it is a challenge. All right, with that, again, thanks everyone for coming and sharing and offering ideas and suggestions and things that we may or may not have already thought of to put on the list and, to continue this work and short and long-term, adjustments to improve things. Next and final item on the agenda tonight is issuance of solicitation permit Nader Deschrone for Trinity Solar.
Seems to be an annual request.
I feel like, we've seen Trinity Solar on some cycle,
Very
going around to the houses that
Very
don't have
frequently,
panels.
they like to come out and
try again.
solicit for free quotes, free outreach and assessments. I remember doing this one last year as well. I read through the application. I don't see any concerns with it, and I know Chief put a letter through. He didn't have any concerns with it, and noted that the fee was paid, application was complete, so I'd have no concerns with it. I say that because we've done it several years in a row, and I haven't had any residents complain that I know of that it's becoming a nuisance. So,
I have not either, so,
yeah.
which is good.
My cats don't do the same thing. They don't have the same fear.
I'll make a motion that we approve the solicitation permit for applicant Dave Sharon from,
Trinity Solar.
on behalf of Trinity Solar. I was just looking at timing. It's for a period of 12 months from today, June 22nd, 2022.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Our next meeting is Tuesday, June 5th, because June 4th is the holiday. July 5th.
I think we moved that one to the 6th.
That's how we.
Yes, we did, and we talked about moving to 6th. So we're going to move it to Wednesday, July 6th.
Yeah,
Can we do 7 instead of 6:30?
that's fine with me.
That work? Okay. Thank you.
Late night. After not meeting.
We'll try to keep the agenda.
Yeah.
Well, it'll only be 2 weeks.
True.
It's only 2 weeks.
True.
It's not extended. Okay. Any other business? Motion to adjourn. 7:47. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.